EGA Dillingham Airport, late July. The air was still, the sky a pale Alaskan blue, the tarmac shimmered, and workers moved with routine efficiency, loading supplies and greeting passengers. In Alaska, small planes are essential. School bus, ambulance, delivery van. The hum of a Piper J3 C-65 Cub was part of the daily rhythm, until it wasn't. Suddenly the drone turned to a sputter. Heads turned, hearts stopped. The plane, on final approach, dipped sharply, wings tilting at a dangerous angle. For a moment it hung between sky and earth, a dreadful silence. Then, a sickening crunch of metal shattered the calm. The yellow Piper Cub slammed onto the runway, not landing but falling. The impact was violent. The plane bounced, skidded, and came to rest in a tangle of wreckage. One wing crumpled, the propeller twisted, dust and debris rising. The peaceful morning was torn apart. In the control tower, the radio went dead, only static remained. Workers stared at the runway, faces etched with shock. Everyone knows the risks of flying in Alaska, but nothing prepares you for the reality of a crash. The broken plane was a brutal reminder of life's fragility in this unforgiving land. The day had just begun, but tragedy had already marked it. The airport's routine was shattered. The community's lifeline was now a scene of devastation. The silence that followed was heavy with grief. The crash would ripple far beyond the runway. For Dillingham, nothing would be the same. The sound of that morning would echo for a long time. The pilot was John Lansadell, 33, a beloved figure in Dillingham. He worked for Alaska's Department of Fish and Game, flying missions vital to the region. John was more than a pilot. He was a friend, neighbor, and part of the community's fabric. The Piper Cub he flew was a classic, trusted by Alaskan pilots for decades. But something went terribly wrong that morning. The investigation would later search for answers. Engine failure, weather, or something else. The crash happened at 9:15 a.m. on a clear day, making it all the more baffling. In Alaska, even perfect conditions can turn deadly in an instant. John was the sole occupant, pronounced dead at the scene. News spread quickly, grief settling over the town. His loss was not just personal, it was a blow to the entire community and the state he served. The wreckage was more than twisted metal, it was a symbol of a life cut short. The community mourned a young man with a bright future. The crash left Dillingham searching for answers. The pain was raw, the loss profound. The runway, once a symbol of connection, now marked a tragic divide. The town would never forget. Emergency protocols snapped into action as fire trucks and rescue vehicles sped to the wreckage. The airport's small, skilled crew moved fast, securing the scene and checking for fire. Dillingham's resources were limited. The crash strained them to the breaking point. The airport shut down, isolating the region and disrupting vital services. First responders managed the site, knowing they'd need federal help. Investigating a crash requires NTSB and FAA experts, normally dispatched within hours, but this time, help wasn't coming. The local team documented the scene, preserving evidence for investigators who might not arrive soon. The emotional toll was immense. John was one of their own. They worked with professionalism, but the crisis was growing. The airport's closure rippled through the region, cutting off supplies and travel. The responders faced a daunting task, alone and uncertain. Every hour without federal support made their job harder. The community's isolation deepened. The crash was no longer just a tragedy, it was a crisis. The responders' courage was tested as never before. They held the line, waiting for help that might not come. The race against time had only begun. The call for federal help was met with silence. Washington was shut down. The NTSB and FAA experts were furloughed, unable to respond. The shutdown was no longer political theater, it was a threat to public safety in Alaska. Without federal investigators, the crash site sat untouched. The airport closed. Days passed, supplies ran low, and medical travel was halted. The shutdown held Dillingham hostage, compounding tragedy with isolation. Evidence at the crash site began to degrade, weather and time working against the investigation. Every hour lost made answers harder to find. The safety net designed to protect the public was gone. For John's family and the community, the wait for answers was agonizing. Frustration and anger grew as the shutdown dragged on. The community felt abandoned, their tragedy forgotten by the rest of the country. The shutdown's shadow loomed over Dillingham, turning crisis into a humanitarian emergency. The airport remained closed, the wreckage a grim monument. The consequences of political gridlock were painfully real. The need for answers and for help grew more urgent by the day. The shutdown's impact was devastating and deeply personal. Frustration boiled over as Alaskans demanded action. Representative Bryce Edgman called the situation an unacceptable government failure. "Aviation is our lifeline," he said. "We can't be collateral in political games." Governor Dunleavy pledged state support but stressed the limits of state resources. "The safety of Alaskans cannot be a bargaining chip," he declared. Dillingham's mayor, Alice Ruby, spoke of the human cost. Medical travel halted, businesses suffering, a grieving family waiting. "This is not abstract, this is our lives. We feel abandoned," she said. National media picked up the story, the image of the crashed plane symbolizing the shutdown's real-world impact. The voices from Alaska became a rallying cry for action. The crisis was no longer invisible. The shutdown's consequences were undeniable. Alaskans demanded their government do its job. Their call was clear. Public safety must come before politics. With federal investigators sidelined, local airport staff and emergency workers bore the full weight of the crisis. The airport manager worked around the clock, coordinating with state agencies and updating the public. Emergency responders maintained a 24-hour watch over the crash site. Resources stretched thin. The emotional toll was immense, dealing with tragedy while managing a logistical nightmare. The airport's closure created a financial crisis, threatening jobs and the facility's future. Isolation set in. The staff felt cut off from the wider safety network. They relied on their own judgment in an unprecedented situation. The burden was immense, but they carried it with courage. The community's safety and the integrity of the investigation rested on their shoulders. They fought to keep the airport, and hope, alive. Their resilience was tested daily. They should never have faced this alone. The shutdown forced them to bear a weight no local team should carry. The Dillingham crash was part of a troubling pattern in Alaska. Recent years saw a string of deadly aviation accidents, each underscoring the state's unique risks. The 2023 death of Eugene Peltola and the crash that killed Jim Tweedo brought national attention to Alaska's aviation dangers. Overloaded planes, unpredictable weather, and economic pressures all play a role. Another crash at Willow Airport weeks later reinforced the urgent need for safety improvements. Each incident adds to the call for better training, maintenance, and oversight. The shutdown's impact was especially egregious. Federal agencies are vital for learning from tragedy. Without investigations, the cycle of risk continues. The government's failure broke the chain of safety. Alaska's skies remain perilous, and the lessons of the past must not be ignored. The cost of inaction is measured in lives. When the shutdown ended, NTSB investigators finally arrived in Dillingham. The local team, exhausted but determined, handed over a scene preserved as best they could. The investigation would take months, but the community's recovery would take far longer. The crisis revealed the dangers of letting politics disrupt essential services. Agencies like the NTSB and FAA are not bureaucratic luxuries, they are critical to public safety. Alaskans now call for essential safety functions to be protected from future shutdowns. The resilience of Dillingham's airport staff and responders was extraordinary. Their dedication kept the investigation alive and the community functioning. The tragedy showed Alaska's fierce independence and sense of community. The loss of John Lansidell is mourned, but his memory fuels calls for change. The lessons of July 2025 are a permanent reminder of both vulnerability and strength. Flying in Alaska will always be risky, but the spirit of those who keep the state connected endures. They look to the sky, undaunted, determined, and unbroken.